Incredible! We made it disappear and reappear, but with very little control. We lost some men.
But do you have the control problem solved?
That is the heart of the Chronosphere project.
This is where you come in. I wanted you to see this, so you understand the importance of your next mission. The Chronosphere is being tested here, at a research center outside Leich. The Soviets recently learned of its location and have begun bombing it regularly. You must protect this research site.
And the scientists working inside?
Get to the base immediately and fortify it. We would evacuate the base, but months of preparation would be wasted. The buildings and their contents must remain operational until the experiment is complete.
Welcome back, Commander. This is a purely defensive mission. Might not sound all that fun, but the game manages to have its own nice little secrets.
Mission saved.
So, does anybody else think that Nikos Stavros has probably had like the easiest job in like any sort of video game acting? All he does is just look stunned. So first things first, you have to actually fight your way to your base. And if you don't do things properly, yeah, you're pretty much gonna lose your beginning troops. So try to do better than what I did. And don't forget to tell your ore truck to actually like work. At least we could drive through whatever blockade they had for us.
Reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
So remember how I said that the AI basically gets tougher and tougher? This is kind of another stepping stone that you have to get across.
Yes, sir. Reporting.
There's a few surprises that the AI will, put up against you. For example, we can see that there's at least 4 openings to our base. You should probably plan around that.
Yes, sir. Reporting.
I've also never quite understood the purpose of that radar dome. I haven't bothered going through any of the mission scenarios yet, just to see like what triggers they have, team types, and so on. And to be honest, I'm not sure if I will, in terms of like explaining maps and triggers, just because this game got a lot more complicated to a very high degree, to the point where it's hard for me to even like.
Construction complete.
How do I want to put this? Like following exactly like every trigger, what it does, how it does it, and so on. The map triggers like are tripled by like a minimum almost. So there's a lot to go through with every single mission.
Building. Waiting orders. Vehicle reporting. Always. Yes, sir.
So again, I don't know what the purpose of that radar dome is. I always figured, what if I just like capture it? Maybe it'll give me something. But I believe I try to attempt that later on.
On hold.
On the plus side, though, since it's a defensive mission and we know exactly where the AI is going to come from, you kind of have an easy time of placing stuff like these AT mines. Doesn't make it any easier to deal with mammoth tanks, though. Oh, and when I was first playing this, I thought that there was like a glitch that I managed to do and some other kind of screw up. But you'll notice that I just put 2 turrets in the top right of my base, and as best I can figure, it's because my mouse is just like screwing up. So I'm hitting like I'm just like double clicking left click. I don't know. Anyways, it was particularly frustrating. So there's a few things that you absolutely want to do for this level. First is not let any of your soldiers get crushed by tanks as they emerge from a transport. Secondly is always be mining the middle road. Like, you can just make a wall of mines, really, just because the AI doesn't send out units that frequently, so you've got quote-unquote downtime to work with. And you also want your defensive lines, in terms of AT mines, to at least be like 4 thick if possible. The reason behind it is that the mammoth tanks are very sturdy, so they require, I believe, 3 mines. And let's just say mammoth tanks don't always work alone in this mission. As well, you want to protect the left side. Both left openings require some form of defensive structure. Your best bet is to have something along the lines of 2 turrets and a pillbox. Camo if you can, but it's not really necessary. The reason being is that the AI usually sends some transports from the water. Technically, you could just block the water off. Just get like a bunch of gunboats and, you know, block it physically. But it costs money, and sometimes it doesn't really work 100%.
Yes, sir.
I also forget sometimes, like, exactly where the transports spawn. Like, sometimes I feel like it might spawn them on the lower side, and blocking both ways for the water is just incredibly impractical.
Unit ready.
I believe I try it later on, just to kind of give you guys an idea.
Yes, sir.
So if you don't happen to block the waterway off, again, 2 turrets, like pillbox, should be enough. Although nothing's really stopping you from adding a couple extra defenses. Your main issue from the road is obviously going to be the V2 rockets. The fact that they outrange anything you have basically just means that they've got free shots, and you need something mobile to get you to attack them.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Awaiting more knowledge. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Vehicle affirmative.
Yeah, see, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to capture it, but it still lets me attack it?
Affirmative. Yes, sir.
I don't know. Again, I'll look this up eventually, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
I briefly spotted a signal flare, but it seems more to be something for the Soviets rather than my own side. It's probably a landing spot for a transport. Here's me trying to lure at least like a tank to go onto a mine, and hey, kind of worked. That's more lucky than anything else, but I'll take it.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Now, for the curious, the Soviets actually do have a base on this map, so theoretically it's possible to, I guess, like tank rush them, destroy their base,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
or at least their means of funding, and then the only thing they would have is whatever transports come in occasionally, and the occasional like bomb drop and paradrop, but
Affirmative.
those should be the only things.
Affirmative.
I haven't taken a look at the map, so I figure it's doable, but probably not worth it. Or maybe like worth it at a easier difficulty.
Building.
The far bottom left is much of the same as just the standard left opening. You see far fewer transports go that way, but they do show up occasionally, so... And infantry's not gonna... Like, infantry alone is just not gonna work, so you kinda want a couple turrets there too.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Construction
Acknowledged.
complete.
Yes, sir.
Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Building.
In all honesty, I probably should have built a second mine layer, but
Construction complete.
kinda just like stopped paying attention to it for whatever reason. And once again, if you don't care about the walls, especially the ones that don't really affect anything, like these ones,
Unit prepared.
go ahead and sell them.
Unit ready.
Sure, your base doesn't look aesthetic anymore, but, you know, money.
Building.
Yes, sir.
You just be careful when you actually do that, though, because, you know, you shake the hand a little bit, and next thing you know, you've sold the power plant.
Construction complete. Unit lost.
Ready and waiting. Yes, sir.
Lost.
Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Unit lost.
Yes,
Building.
sir. Reporting.
Unit
Affirmative.
ready.
Ready and
Unit
waiting.
lost.
Affirmative.
Unit lost.
Waiting order. Affirmative.
And that's why you want some turrets and pillboxes down there.
Acknowledged. Vehicle. Acknowledged.
Granted, if you had, like, rocket soldiers,
Cancel.
rather than just straight up infantry, you'd probably have an easier time of getting rid of that threat.
Yes, sir.
But,
Affirmative.
again, the investment of turrets and pillboxes is probably cheaper in the long run.
On hold. Cancel.
And you're going to want AA guns in the bottom left anyways to deal with the parabomb drop. So, you know, no sense having like actual units there.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
20
Yes, sir.
minutes remaining.
Acknowledged.
Construction complete. Low power. Building. On hold. Building.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Affirmative.
Preparing. Insufficient funds.
Vehicle. Reporting. Awaiting order. Acknowledged. 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 Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Waiting order. Affirmative. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Of course. Yes, acknowledged. Waiting order. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Vehicle. Acknowledged.
It's hard not to talk about it, but I feel it's particularly strange for the game to not allow you to even use the Chronosphere.
Cancel. Building.
Yes, sir.
I guess
Affirmative. Ready and
technically it's still being tested,
affirmative.
but it seems like a good mission to at least like let the player try things out.
Yes, sir.
Construction
Affirmative.
And there's a really good reason as to why you absolutely want to use anti-tank mines on this level.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative.
Generally speaking, the units will follow the same line every time. So if you know what it is, you can kind of just mine that and be done with it. I prefer full coverage just in case.
Acknowledged.
You never know when some weird unit collision happens, and then, a Bama tank at full health reaches you rather than one that's almost dead.
Reporting.
But getting back to the Chronosphere,
Construction complete.
Acknowledged.
the cutscene actually reveals a particularly large failing of the actual weapon, quote-unquote.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
I say weapon just because, I mean, what else are you really going to call it?
Acknowledged.
Cannot deploy here.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Einstein mentions that, not everybody returned. And the idea is that,
Building.
well,
Reporting.
the Chronosphere isn't a perfect machine. Apparently, whenever it transmits, or I guess shouldn't say transmit, but whenever it transports matter from one location to another,
Funds.
and I guess technically from one time to another, or depending on how you want to look at the Chronosphere's use, it doesn't seem to be very person-friendly.
On hold. Cancel. Construction.
As a result, you can't actually transport infantry in this game. So, thoughts of teleporting Tanya into the enemy base just for her to wreak havoc is sadly not something that's possible. By that same extension, I don't believe you can transport naval vehicles because there's nothing. I believe the reason is that there's nothing in the game's code that would determine if a naval vehicle would explode, like on touching the ground. So they just make it so that it's not something you can select.
Acknowledged.
I might be wrong on that, but I feel like that's the reason for it.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Oh, and hey, the Soviets want to use my mineral field, and somehow drove over a mine. Whatever.
Unit ready.
Point being in all this is that there's certain limitations to the Chronosphere. You can't transport infantry, you can't teleport boats, and on top of that, there's, I believe, limitations on which kinds of vehicles you can actually move around. For example, you can move an APC, but I don't believe you can move an APC that has people in it. If I remember correctly, 20 years ago, the effect was rather gruesome for all of the occupants.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Yes, vehicle. Affirmative. Waiting. Affirmative.
Unit
Yes,
ready.
sir. Acknowledged. Vehicle. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting.
Building.
Awaiting order. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Construction complete.
Oh, and somehow I managed to piss off a mammoth tank with my boats.
Reporting. Affirmative.
I really don't know what's going on with that guy, but he's more than happy to drive up to my gunboats and try to murder them.
Yes, sir. Waiting. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes, sir. Not affirmative.
Our base is under attack.
On the plus side, I think that glitch actually makes it so that the mammoth tank never will do anything, period.
Affirmative. No. Waiting order.
Affirmative. Lost.
Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir. Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Building. Insufficient funds. Unit lost.
Waiting order. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Unit lost.
Yes, sir. Vehicle reporting. Acknowledged.
I only just noticed, but
Acknowledged.
We have a tech center, so how come we don't have a GPS satellite?
Yes,
I
sir.
wonder if I built a second one, if that would do anything.
Yes, sir.
Although maybe it's like a tech level thing, and that's why we don't even get the Chronosphere.
On hold. Fencing.
Oh, and not that it really does anything for the AI, but there's a very good reason as to why it's sending out a spy plane.
Yes, sir.
It's not so that I can waste rockets or anything, or so it can occupy my AA guns. It's more of a flavor thing.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
You see, the 4 gap generators are
Acknowledge. Yes, sir.
a very interesting bit of technology, but not one that you ever really take advantage of as a player.
Affirmative.
The gap generators
Affirmative. Yes, sir.
kind of fulfill what's in the name. It basically generates fog of war.
Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Even if you have, like, the players...
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Well, that was interesting. So, gap generators. They basically refresh fog of war in an area. If you look at the mini-map, you can see that my base is kind of like blacked out. And that's basically the area of effect of all my gap generators.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Acknowledged.
Personally, I've never seen a use for them, but again, I don't play against other humans, so that's basically the reason.
Minutes forward.
If you did have a gap generator out on the map against another human player, then effectively they're blind to that area, making surprise attacks and army buildups, force compositions, all that sort of stuff
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
a lot easier to achieve.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Base
Yes,
is
sir.
under attack.
Affirmative.
Construction complete. Building. Warning. 2.
Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Construction complete.
Affirmative.
Building.
Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Waiting order. Affirmative. Vehicle reporting.
Building. Unit
Reporting.
power.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Wait. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, affirmative. Yes, affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Vehicle.
Another, like,
Yes, sir.
super interesting thing that I don't feel ever gets linked with this game is that the Chronosphere and the way it's introduced makes it basically the Philadelphia experiment of this timeline.
Acknowledge. Reporting. Affirmative. Waiting orders. Vehicle reporting.
Building.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Mission accomplished.